Well, it's just touristy to be convenient, but not too bad. This North Cotswold town of Chipping Campden is a peach. This market town, once the home of the richest Cotswold wool merchants, has incredibly beautiful thatched roofs. Now, you can't see them through here, but both the great historian G.M. Trellian and the patron St. Rick Steves calls Chipping Campden's High Street the finest in England. This may be Chipping Campden's most famous monument, the Market Hall. It stands in front of the TI. It's kind of the center of the city. It was built in 1627 by the 17th century lord of the manor, Sir Baptist Hicks. And look for the, let's see, Hicks coat of arms. They have them here somewhere on the outside of the building. Back then, it was an elegant shopping hall for the townsfolk who would come here to buy their produce. In the 1940s, it was almost sold to an American, but the townspeople heroically raised money to buy it back. They gave it to the National Trust for its preservation. The timbers that are inside are true to the original. If you look at these classic stone roofs still held together, these are held together by wooden pegs, if you can see up in here in this area. And they're nailed in from underneath. Buildings all over the region still use the same type of stone shingles. And today, this hall, though it's rarely used, stands as a testimony to the importance of trade in the medieval Campden. And here, just next to the market square, is this sober World War II memorial. It's a reminder of the huge price that was paid by nearly every little town in England. And if you walk around it, you'll notice how in 1918, which was World War I, that's when they had the heaviest losses. Now here, between the Market Hall and the World War I memorial, you're going to find this disc that's embedded in the ground that marks the ceremonial start of the Cotswold Way. You'll find its partner back in Bath, where we were about 100 miles away, that marks the southern end. It is one long, 100-mile contiguous trail that connects Bath to Chipping Campden. The old city hall with its cute little church bell up on top. Cute little bell. We always stop and take a look at real estate. Always looking at real estate. Anything you like, Jack? And more real estate. Now this house, they call Green Dragon because of its decorative black cast iron fixtures. They originally in the stables. Well, these things once held hay and functioned like a salad bowl for horses. Fine cut stones define the door, which you might notice that there's more rubble stones make up the rest of the wall. The pink stones are the same as limestone, but they've been heated and they likely were scavenged from a house that burned down. And it is full of these beautiful streets, these beautiful buildings. They all do look a little bit the same. Jackie notes that she goes, oh, there's just no creativity between them, but they built these. What choices did they have? They had stone, or stone. Wood stuff always burned down. So this was the stuff they could build with. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. Now this tiny little river, tilt down here, this tiny little river, which is the River Cam, once powered a mill. And it's powered that mill here since around 1790. And today it houses a handicraft workers guild, and some interesting history. In 1902, Charles Robert Ashby revitalized the sleepy hamlet of 2500 by bringing a troupe of London artisans and their families, about 160 in all, to this town. Ashby was a leader in the Romantic arts and craft movements, craft people repulsed by the Industrial Revolution, who idealized the handcrafted and handmade crafts of pre-industrial ways. Ashby's idealistic craftsman guild lasted only until 1908, when it ran into financial difficulties and the individual artisans were left to run their own businesses. And so today, the only shop survives from the originals is the silversmith David Hart. His grandfather came to town with Ashby, and the workshop upstairs in the Mills building is an amazing time warp. Little has changed since 1902. Now, Rick Steves describes him as a gracious elderly man, as well as a fine silversmith, and he and his son William and nephew Julian welcome browsers 6 days a week, Monday through Friday and Saturday until noon. They're proud of everything they make because it's all a one-off. All along this street that we took when we came into town are these fantastic thatched roofs. Many of the houses still have them, and it looks this way for another 500 yards. Just walk down these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little streets. A little tight, a little gets your attention if you're a driver, but still beautiful homes, all beautifully decked out with either slate or thatched roofs. Chipping Campden's High Street has changed not much, very little architecturally since 1840. The town's street plans and the property lines still survive from the 12th century. And as we walk the length of what Rick Steve thinks is England's finest historic high street, if you take a look at the skyline, hopefully my camera can pick that up, you'll see dates on the buildings, and you'll count the number of sundials you see. Notice the harmony of the long rows of buildings. Now, while the street has some different styles, some different architectural styles that have come in through the centuries, everything you see is made of the same stone, the Cotswold stone. It's the only stone that's allowed for the builders to use today. Now, also to remain level, this high street arcs with the contour of this hillside. Because it's so wide, the street itself, you know that this was a market town. In past centuries, livestock, pack horses, probably filled or piled with freshly shorn wool fleece, would fill these streets. Campden was a sales and distribution center for the wool industry, and merchants from as far away as Italy would come here for the prized raw wool. A little tidbit that I learned is that High Street has no house numbers. There's no house numbers on any of these houses or businesses. Locals know their houses by their names. And in the distance, you can see, we'll get up around the corner here, the town church. Now, you'll also notice that you don't see any power lines. All the power lines are buried underground, making the scene delightfully uncluttered from the stuff you'd see. There's the church emerging in the background. As we continue along High Street, you're going to see on this side here are some of the finest homes on the uphill side. Decorative features like Ionic capitals, you'll see way up on top, the Ionic capitals on the top are added for non-structural touches of class. Most high street buildings are half timbered, but with cosmetic stone facades. And once in a while, you could actually see a house like this one. It's hard to see up on top there, but it's actually tilted backwards as they built that onto the house. But if you see half timbered ones, which you haven't seen yet, sometimes they're kind of crudely put together, made from hand hewn oak. and they're held together by wooden pegs. Now, this is the Ernest Wilson Memorial Garden, and this was once the church's vegetable patch. But this small and secluded garden is a botanist's delight. The garden is filled with well-labeled plants that Victorian botanist Ernest Wilson brought back to England from his extensive travels in Asia. I know some of my friends absolutely love gardening, so this has got to be a pretty special treat. Beautiful plants. It's just a little thing, just a little garden. We'll walk back toward the lovely Miss Jackie, who so patiently puts up with me doing this crap. But I love it. I love digging deep and trying to figure out something a little bit deeper. I've got my patron saints that have gone before me. Nice trellis work here. I'm sure this is beautiful when it's in bloom. Absolutely gorgeous. And back to the beautiful Miss Jackie. Say hi, Jackie. All along the side of the town church, which we'll visit in a couple of seconds, is this sprawling area that's known as Baptist Hicks Land. Now, Hicks, it held a huge estate and a huge manor house. This influential lord of the manor was a family of subsistence. They were the merchants of silk and fine clothing, as well as moneylenders. And there's a gate up here, but beyond the gate, and I'm showing this back to you in the distance, only a few buildings and the charred corner of his mansion survive. His mansion was burned by royalists in 1645 during the Civil War. And notice how the Cotswold stone turns red when burned. So Hicks housed the poor, making a show of his generosity, and he added a long row of almshouses with his neighbor family's coat of arms for neighbors as they walked to church. Now, these almshouses lining the church street on the left house pensioners today, and they have since the 17th century. Pretty incredible. Here's something you don't see every day. A cart wash. It was filled with water to soak the old cart wheels so they'd swell up and stop rattling. This is St. James Church, one of the finest churches in the Cotswolds. St. James Church graces one of its leading towns. Both the town and the church were built by Woolwealth. It's a gorgeous cemetery outside. People out enjoying the sun and on this beautiful day here in May.